Hi everyone, I hope that you guys are keeping well. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is a place where I tell you a true crime story in 10 minutes. So we have got that time on the clock. Welcome to the anniversary. Let's begin. Shwa-na-na-na, 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 shwa-na-na-na. For a lot of people, the name Hannah Foster will ring a lot of bells, but for some, this might be a brand new story. I was under the impression that everyone knew about her, but when I picked this case and started telling my friends and family about it, a few of them had never heard. It was this week 18 years ago that Hannah, who was 17 years old at the time, went out for a drink with her friend from college in Southampton, which is in the southeast of England. The girls went to a few bars on the 14th of March 2003. They were hoping to meet up with a few friends, but that didn't happen. The night didn't go the way they wanted to, and they just decided to call it pretty early. Hannah walked her friend to the bus stop and she waited there for her friend to get on the bus. And when I say their night ended early, this is all before 11 p.m. When she got on the bus, she waved goodbye and then she began her super short, less than half a mile, a few hundred yards walk home. But that would be the last time that Hannah was ever seen alive. It was just after 5 a.m. when her mum got up for work and she noticed that Hannah hadn't come home for the night before. She called her, she texted her, her phone was ringing and the texts were going through, but she wasn't getting a response. Hannah's dad called the police at 10:30. They treated her as a potential abductee really quickly. They started door-to-door inquiries, which didn't yield much, but the one thing that they did have on their side was Hannah's phone, because it was still on. They tried to track the location, but it isn't as high-tech as you or I may think. I thought phone's on, they get like a little dot moving through the map, but no. Each time a mobile phone receives a text or a call, it transmits a signal to a mast, and that registers an approximate location of the phone. The police could determine that the phone was in a vehicle because it was moving quicker than if she was walking, and the vehicle was traveling between Southampton and Portsmouth on Saturday the 15th of March 2003, and then the phone stopped moving. The police also found something else. They realised that she had called 999 at 11 p.m. on the night she went missing, mere minutes after she had just seen her friend off on the bus. And I think at this point, the doubt, if there was any in their minds, it was gone. Hannah was not a willing missing person. The call was disconnected when Hannah didn't answer. And this as well, to me, is something new that I learned while researching this case. The operator who answered the 999 call didn't get a reply from Hannah because she couldn't speak, because she was in danger, but obviously he didn't know that. He passed the call over to an automated system which hung up when Hannah didn't do the things that you're meant to do in order to tell them that you can't speak. But nobody knows that. Hannah didn't know that. I didn't know that before I started looking at this. I listened to a podcast, a CASEFILE, that I will link in the description, and it really explains this part of it. Brand new information. They did get audio that was recorded. The police could hear a refrigeration unit on the vehicle that Hannah was being kept in on that 999 call, so it helped them narrow down the type of car that she was in. They could also tell somehow that she was in a diesel van as well. They could hear the man who had abducted Hannah speaking to her. So even though she wasn't responding, there was somebody speaking to her, and he had a West Asian accent, and she was being told to duck down so she couldn't be seen. It was 2 days after she went missing that her body was found in the outskirts of Southampton. It was found in brambles. She was spotted by a 14-year-old boy from his mother's car. She had been raped, she had been strangled, and she had been murdered. Her bag was found the next day at a recycling plant in Portsmouth, and her phone was inside and it was still on. This is when the appeals began.
If you have any information that would help the police to solve this evil crime, we need you to come forward.
It was a specific appeal on Crime Watch that would catch the eye of somebody who would be pivotal in giving the Fosters the answers that they craved. So the police were able to narrow their hunt of the vehicle that had taken Hannah down to only 7 white vans. They were able to cross-reference where Hannah's phone was to where CCTV was to track these vehicles. And one man rang in and gave the name of one of his employees, Maninder Pal Singh Kohli. He was a food delivery driver who was on shift on the night that Hannah went missing. The employer also gave the police the license plate of the van that Kohli had been driving, and it was on every single location on the CCTV. Every single one at exactly the point that Hannah's phone was being pinged. The police seized the van that Coley had been driving, and after forensic testing they found Hannah's blood and DNA in it. They found a chrome pole in the van that had her hair and blood on it. They found his semen on one of the chairs of the van that matched the full DNA profile that they had, because on Hannah's body and on her clothing, specifically her jacket, there was loads of forensic evidence, and they were able to get a full DNA profile, but the person they were looking for just wasn't in the database. Along with the body, the clothing, the CCTV, the phone evidence, the police knew that they had their man. They went to his house to arrest him, but this guy was not home. There was no one home. They had abandoned ship. They tracked down his wife. She explained that her husband went back to India to see his sick mum. He had left 4 days after Hannah had died. And now I want to tell you about the night that Hannah disappeared, but from the point of view of Meninda Powsing Coley. While Hannah was going to different bars in the area, Coley was drinking on the same stretch of road that she was. As Hannah left the last pub that she went to, he also left his pub, and he spotted her while she was with her friend at the bus stop. And that's when he lay in wait for her. She walked past his white van and he grabbed her. And then when he got home, he decided that he needed to go to India to look after his mum. She had been hit by a bus a few months before, and to be honest, when he got there, his family were surprised because his mum had been ill. She had been sick for a few months, but he got a flat and he hid out in the Punjab in India. And his family found out pretty quickly that there was a UK arrest warrant for Coley, but he just went even further on the run. When the police questioned his wife, she told them something a bit nuts as well. She said that on the night that Hannah died, her husband had come home with a scratch on his face and he was super upset. He said that while he was in the pub having a drink, somebody had put a body in the back of his van. Like, he went to his van, opened it, there's a body. And then he drove home and there's just a body in the van. So those two went to bed and had a sleep. Then he got up super early in the morning, then he left. There weren't any other suspects in the case of Hannah Foster. The police had all of that evidence and they kind of had him banged to rights, but it would take more than 5 years to get justice because this guy ran away to India. The police couldn't get permission to go to the Punjab in order to continue their investigation, in order to capture and then question their suspect. More than a year later, after so much bureaucracy and red tape and stuff, they finally were able to go to India, and they took Hilary and Trevor, Hannah's parents, with them. They went to make appeals to find Coley. There was already a substantial reward for him, but nobody had come forward. And that's when Hampshire police and the Sun newspaper collided, and they put up a 5 million rupee, which is about 60 grand reward, which is a huge sum. In India, here, it's a massive sum. During the 10-day visit that the Foster family were there, they held a series of press conferences and they opened a telephone hotline, and their visit soon became a subject of high nationwide interest in the Indian press. I think what the police failed to kind of understand, the UK police, is that these types of crimes happen all the time in India. So while the police, of course, are sympathetic to their UK counterparts, and whilst they, want to help, they've got their own madness to be dealing with. But the introduction of the Foster family and kind of humanizing what happened to their child, who was 17 years old, really got the Indian press going. And when all this happened, Coley went on the run again. He hop, skipped and jumped out of the Punjab. He ended up in some teeny tiny village near the Nepalese border in West Bengal. He shaved his head off, he went by the name Mike, and he was pretending to be a doctor, basically. And he was caught after a number of tip-offs, after people who knew him as Mike coming forward to the police. He was a hair's breadth away from getting away. He was literally about to board a bus that would take him to Nepal with his new wife, and he probably would have been lost forever. And then he made this admission on Indian TV.
And I just, strangled her, like just hold with that way and put a hand on her mouth and killed her.
He was held in custody in New Delhi pending extradition to the UK for ages. He recanted that confession that you guys just saw. The case underwent 100 court proceedings, 35 appeals, and after 3 years of wandangling, wrangling, shaking it up and twisting it around, the final decision to extradite Meninda Powsing Coley came through in 2007, and he was taken back to the UK. He was arrested the second his feet touched the soil, and in 2008 he was found guilty after a trial of abducting, raping and murdering Hannah Foster. the trial was, I haven't got time to go into it, but he was like, oh no, somebody put a body in my car, and then they were like, but your DNA's on her. He was like, okay, they forced me to do that, and then I put the body in the car. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommended term of 24 years. So he is expected to remain in prison until at least 2030, and he'll be 63 when he's eligible for release. And there we have it, our 10 minutes are up, and that was as much as I could get in of the case of Hannah Foster, who 18 years ago today, the day of uploading actually, she was abducted while she walked home. Please use the description box and have a look at the full story, especially one of the podcasts that I'm going to link will have a lot of information about that 999 automated system thing that none of us seem to know about. And before I go, I was always going to do this case this week. I've got a crime calendar, it's been in my diary for months, this research has been ready, but it just feels a bit mad to know that I'm speaking about a historical case, 18 years old, of a woman who was walking home alone at night who was abducted and murdered, when this week another woman who was walking home alone at night was abducted and murdered. And of course, Hannah Foster and Sarah Everard, the circumstances and the specifics of their case are very, very different. But women walking home alone, has anything changed in the last 18 years? I'm not sure. But thank you for watching anyway. If you want to stay up to date with true crime throughout the entire week and not just on Sundays, follow my true crime Instagram. I'll link it in the description. Until next week, that's it from me. 10 minutes done. Yinka, get off the camera. Stay safe, and I will see you guys next week.